Kate felt time slowed down as she began to lower her head in the traditional bow. What started as a formal gesture required by royal protocol quickly transformed into something much deeper and more meaningful as her chin moved toward her chest. Kate was overwhelmed by a flood of emotions that she had not expected. The simple act of bowing became a physical expression of all the gratitude, respect, and humility that had been building inside her since the moment she received the royal invitation 3 weeks earlier. The movement felt natural and right, as if her body knew exactly what to do without conscious direction from her mind. Kate found herself bowing deeper than she had practiced, deeper than the protocol guidelines suggested, and deeper than any of the other guests had done before her. This was not a calculated decision or an attempt to impress anyone in the room. Instead, it came from a place of genuine emotion that seemed to well up from the very core of her being, surprising even Kate herself with its intensity and authenticity. As Kate's bow deepened, something extraordinary happened in the throne room. The usual whispered conversations that typically continued during such formal presentations came to a complete stop. Even the palace staff, who had witnessed thousands of royal receptions over their years of service, found themselves paying closer attention to this particular moment. There was something about Kate's gesture that commanded the attention of everyone present, though none of them could quite explain what made it different from all the other bows they had seen. The sovereign, who had received countless formal greetings throughout her long reign, immediately recognized that what she was witnessing was special. Kate's bow was not performed for show or to follow rules, but came from a place of sincere respect and genuine emotion. The queen had learned over the years to distinguish between gestures made for appearance and those that came from the heart. And Kate's bow clearly belonged to the latter category. The sovereign's own posture softened as she recognized the authenticity of the moment. Kate remained in her bow longer than protocol required, not because she was unsure when to straighten up, but because the gesture felt so meaningful that she did not want to rush through it. In those extended seconds, she thought about all the children who had touched her life over the years of teaching. She thought about the 8-year-old who had cried with joy when she finally read her first complete book, and the troubled boy who had found comfort in the quiet corner of her classroom during his parents' difficult divorce. The silence in the throne room stretched on, but it was not an uncomfortable silence. Instead, it felt sacred and profound, as if everyone present understood they were witnessing something rare and beautiful. The other guests, many of whom had attended numerous royal events, later said they had never experienced anything quite like the moment when Kate bowed her head. Even those who were normally focused on their own presentations found themselves completely absorbed in watching this humble teacher honor the sovereign. Kate's bow also represented something larger than her individual respect for the monarchy. In that gesture, she was honoring all the values that had shaped her life and career. She was showing respect for the dedication to service that both she and the sovereign shared. Despite their vastly different circumstances and responsibilities, she was acknowledging the importance of duty, commitment, and putting others before oneself. Principles that guided both a village teacher and a reigning monarch. The sovereign watched Kate's extended bow with growing appreciation and understanding. The queen had spent decades meeting people from all walks of life, and she had developed a keen ability to recognize sincerity when she saw it. Kate's gesture reminded the sovereign of why she had chosen to dedicate her own life to service, and it reinforced her belief in the goodness and nobility that existed in ordinary people doing extraordinary work in their communities. As Kate finally began to straighten up from her bow, she felt changed by the experience. The gesture had allowed her to express feelings that she had not even realized she was carrying. She felt lighter somehow, as if the bow had released something that had been weighing on her heart. When she lifted her head and met the sovereign's eyes again, she saw something there that had not been present before, warmth and recognition that went beyond the formal requirements of the occasion. The moment of eye contact between Kate and the sovereign lasted only a few seconds, but it felt much longer to both women. In that brief exchange, they recognized each other as people who understood what it meant to serve others, regardless of the scale or scope of their responsibilities. The sovereign saw in Kate the dedication and compassion that she valued most in her subjects, while Kate saw in the sovereign a leader, truly cared about the well-being of all her people. The impact of Kate's bow rippled through the entire room. Other guests found themselves moved by what they had witnessed, even though many of them could not articulate exactly why the moment had been so powerful. Some later said that Kate's bow had reminded them of their own responsibilities to their communities and the importance of approaching their work with genuine dedication rather than mere obligation. Palace staff members who had worked at countless royal events would later describe Kate's bow as one of the most memorable moments they had ever witnessed. The head butler, who had been present for over 30 years of royal receptions, quietly told his colleagues that Kate's gesture had restored his faith in the meaning and importance of the ceremonies they helped to orchestrate. Her authenticity had reminded everyone present of why these traditions existed in the first place. The sovereign's reaction to Kate's bow was subtle, but unmistakable to those who knew how to read the royal expressions and gestures. The Queen's slight nod of approval and the softening of her features indicated that she had been genuinely moved by Kate's display of respect. For a moment, the formal distance that necessarily existed between monarch and subject seemed to diminish, replaced by a recognition of shared humanity and purpose. As Kate straightened to her full height, she felt the eyes of everyone in the room upon her. But instead of feeling self-conscious or embarrassed, she felt proud of the gesture she had made. She knew that her bow had been honest and heartfelt, and that was all that mattered to her. She had represented herself, her students, and her profession with dignity and authenticity. And she could ask for nothing more than that. The throne room remained silent for several more seconds after Kate completed her bow, as if everyone needed time to process what they had just witnessed. When the sovereign finally spoke, her voice carried a warmth and genuine interest that indicated how much Kate's gesture had affected her. The formal presentation was about to transform into something much more personal and meaningful than anyone had expected. Kate stepped into the throne room and immediately felt the weight of centuries pressing down upon her. The space was even more magnificent than she had imagined, with towering columns that seemed to reach toward heaven and walls, decorated with priceless paintings depicting the nation's history. The carpet beneath her feet was deep red with golden threads woven throughout, so thick that her footsteps made no sound as she walked. Every surface gleamed with polish and care, from the marble floors to the ornate ceiling that stretched high. Above her head, the sovereign sat upon the throne with perfect posture, wearing a deep blue dress that seemed to capture and reflect the light from the chandeliers above. A simple but elegant crown rested upon her head, and her jewelry was understated, yet clearly precious. What struck Kate most was how the sovereign's presence filled the entire room without any effort or display. There was something about her that commanded respect and attention, not through force or intimidation, but through a quiet dignity that came from years of service and responsibility. Kate began her slow walk toward the throne, acutely aware that dozens of eyes were watching her every move. The other guests, who had already been presented, stood along the sides of the room, their faces showing polite interest in the proceedings. Kate could feel their curiosity about who she was and why she had been invited to this prestigious event. She tried to keep her breathing steady and her steps measured, remembering all the advice she had received about royal protocol and proper behavior. As she drew closer to the throne, Kate could see the sovereign's face more clearly. The Queen's eyes were kind but alert, taking in every detail of Kate's appearance and demeanor. Kate had expected to feel intimidated by this scrutiny, but instead, she felt a strange sense of calm beginning to settle over her. The sovereign's expression was not judgmental or cold, but rather seemed genuinely interested in meeting her and learning about her work. This small recognition gave Kate the confidence to continue walking with her head held high. The palace official standing beside the throne began to speak, his voice carrying clearly throughout the room as he introduced Kate to the sovereign. He mentioned her work as a teacher in an underprivileged school district, her innovative reading programs, and the significant improvements in student achievement that had resulted from her efforts. Kate felt a flush of pride as she heard her accomplishments described in such formal and respectful terms. She had never thought of her daily work as anything extraordinary. Hearing it presented in this setting made her realize the true impact of her dedication. The sovereign's attention focused entirely on Kate as the introduction concluded. Kate could feel the intensity of that gaze, but it was not uncomfortable or overwhelming. Instead, she sensed a genuine interest and respect from the monarch, as if the sovereign truly understood the importance of the work Kate was doing with children. This moment of recognition from someone so important and respected filled Kate with a warmth that spread through her entire body, making her feel more confident than she had since receiving the royal invitation. Kate knew that the moment for her formal greeting was approaching rapidly. She could see the slight change in the sovereign's posture that indicated she was ready to receive Kate's bow. All the hours of practice in her bedroom seemed inadequate now that she faced the reality of performing this gesture in front of the most important person in the kingdom. She thought about her students, many of whom had never imagined that their teacher would stand in such a place, and their faith in her gave her the strength to proceed. The silence in the throne room was profound, broken only by the soft rustle of fabric as other guests shifted position to get a better view of the proceedings. Kate could hear the sound of her own heartbeat in her ears, and she was certain that everyone in the room must be able to hear it as well. The moment felt suspended in time, as if the entire world had paused to watch this exchange between a humble teacher and the sovereign of the realm. Kate positioned herself at the proper distance from the throne, neither too close nor too far away. She had memorized these details during her weeks of preparation. But now that she was actually in the position, everything felt different from her practice sessions. The throne seemed larger and more imposing than she had imagined, and the sovereign's presence was more powerful than any photograph or television broadcast could have conveyed. Yet beneath the formal trappings of monarchy, Kate sensed the humanity of the person sitting before her. The sovereign's eyes met Kate's directly, and in that moment, Kate felt a connection that transcended all the ceremony and protocol surrounding them. She saw in the sovereign's gaze not just a monarch, but a woman who had dedicated her life to service and duty, much as Kate had dedicated herself to her students. This recognition of shared purpose and commitment gave Kate the courage to proceed with her formal greeting. Knowing that it would be received with understanding and respect, Kate took a deep breath, steadying herself for the moment that would define this entire experience. She thought of all the children she had taught over the years, their faces flashing before her eyes like a slideshow of memories. She remembered the struggling readers who had finally grasped the joy of a good book, the shy students who had found their voices in her classroom, and the troubled children who had discovered that someone believed in their potential. All of these memories seemed to converge in this single moment, giving meaning and purpose to her presence before the throne. The weight of representing not just herself, but all the teachers who worked tirelessly in difficult circumstances settled on Kate's shoulders. She understood that her actions in the next few moments would be remembered not just by those present, but would become part of the story that would be told about this day. The responsibility was enormous, but Kate felt ready to meet it with the same dedication and authenticity that she brought to her classroom every day. As Kate prepared to bow, she felt a profound sense of gratitude for all the experiences that had brought her to this moment. From her humble beginnings in a small farming community to her years of service in an underprivileged school, every step of her journey had prepared her for this encounter. She was no longer just Kate Williams, the nervous teacher who had received an unexpected invitation. She was the representative of everyone who worked to make the world a better place for children, and she was ready to honor that responsibility with grace and dignity. The morning of the royal reception arrived with gray clouds hanging low over the city. Kate woke up at 5 a.m, 2 hours before her alarm was set to ring. She had barely slept, tossing and turning as her mind raced with thoughts of what the day would bring. Her simple bedroom felt different somehow, as if the knowledge of where she would be going had changed everything around her. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the dress hanging on her closet door. Still hardly believing this day had finally come, Kate walked to her kitchen and made herself a cup of tea, her hands shaking slightly as she poured the hot water. The royal invitation sat on her kitchen table where she had kept it for the past 3 weeks. The golden seal, catching the early morning light. She had read it so many times that she could recite it from memory, but she picked it up again anyway, needing to reassure herself that this was really happening. The elegant script seemed to glow in the dim light, and she traced her finger over her name. still amazed that someone in the royal household knew who she was. Her mother had arrived the night before to help her get ready. Kate could hear her moving around in the spare bedroom. The older woman had been more excited than Kate herself, calling all her friends and neighbors to share the incredible news. Kate felt grateful for her mother's support, but also nervous about living up to all the expectations that had been placed on her shoulders. She thought about her students, who had made her a good luck card with their handprints and crayon drawings. Their innocent excitement gave her strength when her own confidence wavered. The preparation process began after breakfast, Kate's mother taking charge like a general, preparing for battle. They laid out everything carefully on Kate's bed: the navy blue dress, the simple pearl necklace that had belonged to Kate's grandmother, and the black shoes she had borrowed from a colleague. Her mother had insisted on bringing her own jewelry box filled with small accessories that might be needed for such a formal occasion. Kate looked at all these items and felt like she was putting on a costume for a play she had never auditioned for. Getting dressed took much longer than Kate had anticipated. Every small detail seemed important, from the way her hair was arranged to the angle of her necklace. Her mother fussed over her appearance, adjusting and readjusting everything until it was perfect. Kate stood in front of her bedroom mirror, barely recognizing the woman looking back at her. The dress fit well and made her look more elegant than she had ever felt, but she still felt like a little girl playing dress up in grown-up clothes. The car ride to the palace was the longest hour of Kate's life. She had arranged for a taxi, not wanting to arrive in her old dented sedan that had seen better days. The driver seemed to understand the importance of the occasion and drove carefully through the busy city streets. Kate watched the familiar neighborhoods pass by her window, each mile taking her further from her comfortable, ordinary world and closer to something completely unknown. She kept checking her appearance in the car's mirror, worried that something might have shifted during the journey. As they approached the palace gates, Kate felt her heart begin to race. The massive iron gates seemed to stretch up toward the sky, and she could see uniformed guards standing at attention on either side. Other cars were arriving as well, expensive vehicles that gleamed in the afternoon sun. Kate watched well-dressed people stepping out of luxury cars, their movements confident and practiced. She wondered if any of them felt as nervous as she did, or if attending royal events was just another ordinary day for them. The palace grounds were even more impressive than Kate had imagined. Perfectly manicured gardens stretched out in all directions, with fountains and sculptures placed strategically. Throughout the landscape, the main building rose majestically in front of her, its windows sparkling like diamonds in the sunlight. Kate had seen pictures of the palace in books and magazines, but nothing had prepared her for the overwhelming grandeur of experiencing it in person. Gathering near the palace steps, Kate could hear the soft murmur of conversation mixed with the sound of gravel crunching under expensive shoes. She noticed how easily these people seemed to move in this environment, greeting each other with familiarity and confidence. Their clothes were clearly expensive, and their jewelry caught the light as they gestured while talking. Kate felt her own simple outfit pale in comparison, but she reminded herself that she was here for her work, not for her wardrobe. The palace staff were positioned at various points along the entrance, ready to guide guests and answer questions. Kate was struck by how professional and courteous they were, treating every person with the same level of respect, regardless of their appearance or status. When a uniformed attendant approached her with a warm smile, Kate felt some of her nervousness begin to ease. The woman checked Kate's name against a list and provided her with a small card that explained the order of events for the evening inside the palace. Kate was amazed by the height of the ceilings and the intricate details of the architecture. Crystal chandeliers hung from above, casting rainbow patterns on the marble floors. Paintings in golden frames lined the walls, depicting scenes from history and portraits of past royals. The air smelled faintly of fresh flowers and old wood, creating an atmosphere that was both elegant and welcoming. Kate felt like she had stepped into a museum, except everything around her was still being used for its original purpose. The other guests moved through the palace corridors with practiced ease, their voices creating a gentle buzz of conversation that echoed off the high walls. Kate followed the crowd, occasionally catching glimpses of rooms through open doorways. Each space seemed more magnificent than the last, filled with antique furniture and priceless artwork. She wondered how many important decisions had been made in these rooms, how many significant moments in history had taken place within these walls. As they approached the main reception area, Kate could feel the energy in the group change. Conversations became more subdued, and people began to check their appearance one final time. Kate realized that even these experienced guests felt some nervousness about meeting the sovereign. This knowledge made her feel slightly better about her own anxiety, understanding that what they were about to experience was special for everyone involved. Regardless of their background or social status, the sound of classical music drifted from somewhere nearby. Kate could see palace staff making final preparations for the formal reception. She took a deep breath, thinking of her students and the work that had brought her to this moment. Whatever happened next, she knew that this experience would change her life forever, and she was determined to make the most of this incredible opportunity that had been given to her. Kate found herself standing in the grand ballroom, a space so magnificent that she had to tilt her head back to see the painted ceiling above. The room was filled with at least 200 guests, all dressed in their finest clothes and speaking in hushed, respectful tones. Enormous mirrors lined the walls, reflecting the light from dozens of crystal chandeliers and making the space appear even larger than it already was. Kate had never seen so much gold and marble in one place, and she felt dizzy just trying to take it all in. The other guests moved around the room with a confidence that Kate envied. They seemed to know exactly where to go and what to do, greeting each other with air kisses and polite conversation. Kate noticed that many of them appeared to be familiar with the palace, pointing out details to their companions or sharing stories about previous royal events they had attended. She felt like an outsider looking in, unsure of the unspoken rules that govern behavior in such a formal setting. A palace attendant approached Kate with a silver tray containing glasses of champagne and sparkling water. Kate chose the water, not trusting herself to hold champagne steady with her trembling hands. The attendant smiled kindly and quietly explained that the formal presentation would begin in about 30 minutes, giving guests time to mingle and admire the artwork displayed throughout the room. Kate thanked him and moved toward one of the large windows, hoping to find a quieter spot where she could collect herself. From her position near the window, Kate could see the palace gardens stretching out below. The view was breathtaking, with perfectly trimmed hedges forming intricate patterns and colorful flowers arranged in elaborate displays. She watched as gardeners moved quietly among the plants, making final adjustments to ensure everything looked perfect. The dedication and attention to detail reminded her of her own classroom, where she spent hours arranging displays and creating a welcoming environment for her students. The sound of a string quartet playing classical music filled the air, adding to the elegant atmosphere of the evening. Kate recognized some of the melodies from her college music appreciation class, though she had never heard them performed live by such skilled musicians. The music seemed to calm her nerves slightly, and she found herself swaying gently to the rhythm. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to memorize every detail of this incredible experience. A woman in an emerald green gown approached Kate with a warm smile. She introduced herself as Lady Margaret, explaining that she worked with several children's charities and had heard about Kate's innovative teaching methods. Kate was surprised and pleased to discover that her work was known beyond her small school district. Lady Margaret asked thoughtful questions about Kate's reading programs and seemed genuinely interested in the challenges facing underprivileged children in public schools. As they talked, Kate began to feel more comfortable. Lady Margaret had a way of making conversation that put Kate at ease, and she found herself speaking passionately about her students and their achievements. She told stories about children who had learned to read for the first time and others who had discovered a love of learning despite difficult circumstances at home. Lady Margaret listened intently, occasionally asking questions that showed she truly understood the importance of Kate's work. More guests began to join their conversation. Drawn by Kate's enthusiasm and authentic stories about teaching, was amazed to discover that several of them were also involved in education or children's welfare programs. A retired headmaster shared his own experiences with challenging students, while a woman who ran a literacy foundation asked for Kate's advice on reaching reluctant readers. Kate realized that despite their formal clothes and impressive titles, these people shared her passion for helping children succeed. The palace staff began to move through the room, quietly informing guests that the formal presentation would begin soon. Kate felt her nervousness return as she realized that the moment she had been anticipating and dreading was finally approaching. Lady Margaret noticed her change in mood and gently placed a reassuring hand on Kate's arm. She reminded Kate that she was here because she had earned this recognition through her dedication and hard work, not because of luck or accident. The guests began to form a long line that would eventually lead to the throne room where the sovereign would receive them. Kate found herself somewhere in the middle of the line, which gave her time to observe the process, but also prolonged her anxiety. She watched as the people in front of her checked their appearance one final time, straightening ties and smoothing dresses. The atmosphere in the room became more formal and respectful as the reality of meeting the sovereign drew closer. Kate could hear the sound of her own heartbeat as the line slowly moved forward. She practiced her curtsy one more time, hoping that her legs would not shake when the moment came. The weeks of preparation suddenly felt inadequate. She worried about making a mistake that would embarrass not only herself but also her school and students. She thought about the children who had made her the good luck card. Their faith in her gave her strength. The massive doors to the throne room opened. Kate caught her first glimpse of the space where she would meet the sovereign. The room was even more impressive than the ballroom, with a high vaulted ceiling and walls lined with portraits of past monarchs. The throne itself was positioned at the far end of the room, elevated on a platform and surrounded by ceremonial guards in their traditional uniforms. Kate felt a shiver of excitement and terror run down her spine. As the line moved closer to the throne room, Kate could hear the quiet conversations between the sovereign and the guests who had gone before her. The exchanges were brief but seemed warm and genuine, the sovereign showing real interest in each person's work or achievements. Kate listened carefully, trying to understand the tone and rhythm of these interactions so she would know what to expect when her turn came. The guest immediately in front of Kate was called forward, leaving her standing alone at the threshold of the throne room. Palace staff members positioned themselves nearby, ready to guide her through the formal presentation process. Kate took a deep breath, reminding herself that she was representing not just herself, but all the teachers who worked tirelessly to help children overcome challenges. She straightened her shoulders and prepared to step into the most important moment of her life. The sound of her name being announced echoed through the throne room. Kate knew there was no turning back. She stepped forward into the magnificent space, feeling the weight of history and tradition surrounding her. Every step toward the throne felt significant, as if she was walking not just across a room, but across the bridge between her ordinary life and something extraordinary. The moment she had been preparing for was finally here, and she was ready to meet it with dignity and grace. Kate Williams sat at her small wooden desk in the tiny teacher's lounge, eating her homemade sandwich while grading papers from her third-grade class. The afternoon sun streamed through the cracked window, casting long shadows across the worn carpet. She had been teaching at Millbrook Elementary School for 8 years now, and every day brought new challenges with her students from low-income families. Many of her children came to school hungry, some without proper shoes and others struggling with problems at home that no 8-year-old should face. The mailman's footsteps echoed in the hallway as he made his daily rounds. Kate barely looked up from Tommy Peterson's math homework when she heard the familiar sound of letters being dropped into the school's main office. She was used to receiving bills and educational supply catalogs, nothing that ever required immediate attention. Her mind was focused on planning tomorrow's reading lesson when the school secretary, Mrs. Henderson, appeared at her door holding an envelope that looked different from anything Kate had ever seen. The envelope was made of thick, cream-colored paper with golden edges that seemed to shimmer in the fluorescent light. Kate's name was written across the front in elegant script that looked like it had been penned by a professional calligrapher. In the upper left corner was an embossed seal that made her heart skip a beat. Even from across the room, she could see it was the royal coat of arms. Mrs. Henderson's eyes were wide with curiosity as she handed the mysterious letter to Kate. Kate's hands trembled slightly as she accepted the envelope. The paper felt heavier than regular mail, and she could smell a faint scent of lavender emanating from it. She had never received anything so formal or official-looking in her entire life. Her first thought was that there must be some mistake. Perhaps the letter was meant for someone else, another Kate Williams who lived in a grand house and moved in important circles. She turned the envelope over and over in her hands, afraid to open it. Mrs. Henderson lingered in the doorway, clearly, hoping to witness whatever was inside. Kate's heart pounded as she carefully broke the wax seal, trying not to damage the beautiful paper. Inside was a single sheet of matching stationery with the same royal letterhead. The words were written in the same elegant script, and as Kate read them, she felt as though she might faint right there in the cramped teacher's lounge. The letter was an invitation to a royal reception at the palace, scheduled for 3 weeks from that very day. It specifically mentioned her work with underprivileged children and her innovative after-school programs that had helped improve reading scores in her district. Kate read the letter 3 times before the words began to make sense. Someone in the royal household had heard about her work and wanted to honor her efforts by inviting her to meet the sovereign in person. Kate's mind raced as she tried to process this incredible news. She thought about her students, many of whom had never seen the inside of a library before she started her reading program. She remembered staying late after school, using her own money to buy books and supplies when the school budget ran out. She had never done this work for recognition or awards. She simply wanted to give these children the same opportunities that more privileged kids had. The letter included detailed instructions about dress code, arrival time, and proper etiquette for meeting royalty. Kate realized she had absolutely no idea how to behave in such formal circumstances. She had grown up in a small farming community where the fanciest event was the annual harvest festival at the local church. Her wardrobe consisted mainly of practical clothes suitable for teaching young children who often needed hugs and help with messy art projects. As word spread through the school, Kate found herself surrounded by excited colleagues who wanted to hear every detail about the invitation. The principal, Mr. Rodriguez, was thrilled that one of his teachers had received such recognition. He immediately began planning how to publicize this honor for the school district. Kate felt overwhelmed by all the attention and secretly wished she could just quietly decline the invitation. That evening, Kate sat in her small apartment, still holding the royal letter. She called her mother, who lived 2 hours away in the countryside where Kate had grown up. Her mother's voice filled with pride and amazement as Kate read the invitation aloud. Her mother had always been supportive of Kate's decision to become a teacher, even though it meant lower pay and long hours. Now she felt vindicated in her belief that Kate was doing something truly important. Kate spent the next few days in a state of disbelief. She kept the letter on her kitchen table and would read it again each morning to convince herself it was real. She began researching royal protocol online, watching videos of other people meeting the sovereign and trying to understand what would be expected of her. The more she learned, the more nervous she became about making a mistake that would embarrass not only herself but also her school and students. The most challenging part was finding appropriate clothing for such a formal event. Kate's teacher salary did not allow for expensive clothes, and she had never owned anything suitable for a royal reception. She spent hours browsing dress shops, feeling completely out of her element among the silk gowns and designer accessories. Everything seemed impossibly expensive and far too fancy for someone who spent her days with 8-year-olds. Kate's students began to notice that their teacher seemed distracted and excited about something. When she finally told them about the invitation, they were amazed that their own teacher was going to meet the Queen. Many of them had never even left their neighborhood, let alone imagined that someone they knew would visit a palace. Their excitement and pride in their teacher began to give Kate confidence that she deserved this honor. As the days passed, Kate started to understand that this invitation was not just about her personally, but about recognizing the important work that teachers like her were doing every day. She represented thousands of educators who worked tirelessly to help children overcome difficult circumstances and reach their potential. This thought both thrilled and terrified her as she realized the weight of responsibility that came with such recognition. The final week before the reception arrived, faster than Kate had expected. She had managed to find a simple but elegant dress that fit her budget. She had practiced her curtsy countless times in front of her bedroom mirror. Her mother had driven down to help her prepare, and together they had watched hours of royal ceremony footage to help Kate understand what to expect. Despite all her preparation, Kate still felt completely unprepared for what lay ahead.